Hey kids, howdy, and welcome to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology, and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox for the end of October as we move into November. There's, been some hope that things calm down as October moves, into November, and I think that's happened a little. But, like that new moon last week, that kicked my ass, though, and it shouldn't have. I've been looking forward to this new moon all year because it hit me so nicely. And then I got to it and it was like everything felt squeezed because it's a wild time and everything just feels a little wilder. So yeah, it's November's going to be, a little less intense than October was. And there'll be another episode before my first Thursday of the month Global Healing Meditation. I remember that on the first Thursday, I'm going to talk all about the astrology for the month at 7 p.m. Pacific in my Zoom. So I don't have any classes to announce because it's the quiet time of the year for me with teaching. Not quiet in my office because I've got to prepare for the year ahead. New Year's Day, keep that in mind. If you want to join me, you can get the recording, but I'll be doing my forecast on New Year's Day. And I'm writing a book on beginning dream interpretation for beginners. But I raised my prices for astrology readings in this lunar cycle. And it made me want to talk just a moment about my credo. I have a credo around pricing that is really important to me, and it goes like this. Process classes, mental health support, shadow work, self-investigation, those classes will always be inexpensive. I haven't raised my prices for those in 4 years. And they're already worth $200 or $300, and I've always had them at $99. That's not going to change. And there are scholarships for every one of my process classes, and no one has ever turned away. Not so much in astrology. You got to pay to be with me for astrology, right? For my classes, you could learn it on your own, and for the times with me privately, for those that can afford to see me privately, you're kind of supporting my ability to do classes, and just wanted to speak about that.
Great.
I had fun doing those rapid fire questions we did earlier this month, so I grabbed another 4 or 5 to do today. So this was from an online request I gave, and I was inundated with questions. So I'm going to inch through them. This is our second hit. Mary asks, I have heard the rising sign in someone's birth chart is the most important. Is that true? I watch your TikToks every day, and I always look forward to your content. Love your energy and knowledge. You rock. And yes, it is. So here's how we sort of govern who has more power in astrology, and it's a very simple structure. When it comes to transiting planets and luminaries, that means, the planets and the sun and the moon moving around. There's a rule that says the slowest planet wins. That means the slower the orbit, the more weight that transit gets. So if you're looking at a moment on a chart and there are 6 transits, 2 with planets and some with the moon, the slower planet has more power than the faster planet, and you interpret sort of both simultaneously with that weighted order in mind. Opposite is so in a natal chart. When you take your first breath, the most sensitive point, the most weight, the most power is the fastest moving, not the slowest. So the rising sign is created by the spin of the earth. So if you know what time you were born and therefore know your rising sign, it's the most sensitive point because of its speed. And the moon would be second, sun third. Part of why we have the personal triangle of rising, sun rising and moon. And so because the rising sign archetypally means how we meet the world, how the world sees us, our interactions with others, and the persona that we present, that's a very sort of like sensitive thing because it's amorphous. It's not who we are, it's what we present. And so yes, the rising sign, most sensitive part in your chart, way more important than the sun sign placement. Erica asks, if you are a parent, did you use your child's natal chart at any point for guidance while raising them? What do you feel is an appropriate age to take a child's chart into consideration, if at all? Love this question. I am not a parent, but I'm an uncle, and I have looked at the charts of children hundreds and hundreds of times over the years with clients. I have done a good handful of like infant child readings where someone's just been born and I look at their chart and I offer a sort of description of their chart. I find this very challenging personally. Like I hate doing the infant charts. I'll do them because they make a sweet gift, but my gift requires a bounce back. So if I'm like reading a chart and there's like nobody there. This is why people say, oh, just send me notes. I'm like, sorry, I need you. I need your energy to bounce off of, to draw through what comes.
Right. It's
and
like
an infant can't bounce back at me. They're in all potential. So that's just challenging. And then what I have to do is I have to shut the channel off and just speak from structure. And I hate that. So now that's personal. I think there are people out there who probably could look at an infant's chart and have a yummy experience of doing it that I don't have. But again, I'll still do it. The way I've done this the most is parents who are struggling with a child. So I've done this with adult children and children of every age. So I would say once a child is at like 8 years old or so, where abstract thinking is complete and their sense of self is formed in a more complex way, now they are like moving through the world in the body and the embodiment that will follow them for the rest of their lives. So I would say 8 or 9 would be a good cutoff if you want a cutoff. And I can tell you that when I have worked with parents about their relationship with children, it's been very satisfying work and very helpful to the parent. Dana writes, stelliums, exclamation point. Can we ask about how these can affect your chart? And she mentions that she's got a stellium in her chart. So it's a stellium just means 3 or more planets together in the same sign. And I have heard astrologers out there talk about stelliums as if they are like all that in a bag of chips in a chart, and that they're like, I heard astrologers who talked about that they were amazing, but they're also really problematic. And it's like, okay, well, I have a stellium. It's been the best part of like my whole external expression because it's up there at the top of my
Seriously?
chart. I mean, granted, one of them is Mars in Libra, and that's why I have an explosive temper, because I'm all peace and balance until I'm not. But that's not the stellium, that's Mars in Libra. So what it means is that whatever consciousness is embodied by the planets in the stellium vibrate each other so that they're all operating more powerfully, a little louder, and in a kind of synchronization. They're all sort of doing the same thing at the same time in a way, in terms of how the house placement of the chart tells you what area of your life is activated most. So my stellium goes from the midheaven into the 10th house, right? So it's all about work and career. And so when anything is moving through either Libra or transiting my Libra points powerfully, that's a stellium in action, because I'll use my chart again to round out the example. And yes, I use points as part of stelliums, meaning a midheaven, a rising sign, a node counts to me as a 3rd or 4th point. So my stellium is about my work and career, my actions in everyday embodiment that are most powerfully expressed in work and career, and my moon is up there, so I long for a successful outward expression. Don asks, what does a Scorpio stellium mean when it's in between the first and second houses? Now, the sign is irrelevant because a stellium is a stellium. I'm sure she's asking about Scorpio because that's the sign of her stellium.
Sure, it's relevant.
Which, I don't like to answer those kinds of questions, though, but I am because I just answered the question about what stelliums are. So now let's talk about what happens when they bridge across two houses in your chart, because that's different. Each house contains a very different sort of element of our consciousness and what it is to be here. They're absolute. So the first house is self, and the second house is values, money, and what we want in life. And there can be no selfness in the second, and there can be no moneyness in the first. So when anything sort of breaks open the boundaries between houses, it has the impact of blurring those two consciousnesses together. And I'm going to always say in a valuable way, right? That would never come to harm you or bother you. It's a benefit. A stellium offers power that's concentrated, and crossing over two houses just means that concentrated effort or consciousness impacts both the self and their values. And then, for other people who have the stellium crossing whatever house it starts in and completes into, is also just being blended. Now, forgive me if I am butchering your name and you hear this. I apologize. It's Sade, Sade, which to me would be like Sade, but that's from the singer in the 80s. So forgive me. SS, hey, honey. You ask, what denotes a karmic or unfavorable synastry with someone? Now, I'm thinking you have been exposed to Vedic astrology because, man, oh man, the Vedics, they love their synastry. That's all they ever want to do is, like you're looking at charts for your kids for their prearranged marriages, like long before the...
Yeah, what is synastry?
Synastry is the relationship between two charts, and it represents the chemistry
Got it.
that two people will feel with each other.
Oh, big in the Vedic.
Yeah, and karmic and unfavorable, that's also very Vedic and very Indian. And in my sort of modern Western mind, unfavorable karma is superstitious. But there is geometry that is harder and geometry that is like lovelier. So it's not like what I'm saying about karma doesn't exist in energy. I just wouldn't label it as some irrefutable, obstacle that you have to face karmically or you're doomed. As I say that, it's like, but I believe that too. I do. I sort of believe that we keep coming. So I don't know what I believe in this, but let me say this. It's interesting in synastry that transits of great friction that would be awful as transits are lovely in synastry. Like someone's Mars squaring someone else's Venus, that's friction and passion and all sorts of yummy stuff. So there's like three things I'll say about, challenges that might be seen. One is there's this thing called the vertex, which is a second rising sign, if you will, and it represents the fated or marriage point. So two people could have the most fabulous chemistry, but if their vertexes aren't harmonious with each other's chart, it'll be an affair and not a long-lasting relationship because the vertex is that. Saturn, you have to be very careful with Saturn because Saturn is, in the superstitious astrology, the malefic, the evil one, the bad news guy. And some synastry with Saturn is like glue between people. So Saturn can be good, but if there's very overt, hard geometry between the Saturn in one chart and anything, especially personal planet in the other and vice versa, Saturn means some lessons are involved in the connection. So it's a very, very big week for Mercury. let's start with the fact that he's just going to move into Sagittarius on Wednesday. So coming out of Scorpio, we've been through a kind of mental death rebirth, intense mind process. And then moving into the mutable fire of Sag is not comfortable for Mercury, which means it's not going to be comfortable for us through the principle of like inability to focus, too much thought, scattered energy. That's the beauty of Sagittarius, but it ain't good for precision, which we sometimes need our mind to be giving us. Now, because he'll go retrograde here, he will return to Scorpio. So there'll be something about learning some new stuff a la Sag that needs a little bit of processing and transformation a la Scorpio. I'm way ahead of myself. I want you to come back to now because it's really complex. There are a lot of little moving parts. So as we move from Tuesday into Wednesday, like around midnight, Mercury in Scorpio will trine Neptune in Pisces because Neptune's moved back into Pisces and Mercury will still be in Scorpio. So there's this water trine overnight. And then 3 a.m. is when he'll ingress Sagittarius. Then by like midday, like noon Pacific on Wednesday, now in this sort of scattered, sign of Sag, he's going to oppose Uranus. Now, that's interesting because Uranus and Mercury, they relate to each other. They are the octaves of the mind. Mercury, personal mind. Uranus, the divine mind, the higher mind. So Mercury's entrance into this mansion that is, startling if you think of leaving the deep waters of Scorpio into the mutable fire of Sag, and the opposition sets us up to be sort of rocked somehow. Supposedly this can be overnight for most of y'all. Some of you farther east will experience this in your early morning. So we somehow wake up into the day with a scattered mind that we didn't have when we went to sleep. And dreams might be very interesting between Tuesday and Wednesday. And then at the end of Wednesday, Mercury sextiles Pluto. And the imprint of our mind to the world at large, in the way I just described, is a game-changing moment for our perceptions. Forget game-changing. What it is a catch-up of our perceptions to kind of be clearly seeing the world outside of you. And in a way that sort of starts with a kind of, let me grab my spiritual center, Scorpio trine Neptune, because in a minute I'm going to be knocked off my ass with there's just too many little details to catch up with in the outside world. I'm confused. I'm knocked off balance. And then by the afternoon of Wednesday, the sextile to Pluto sort of lets us take our power back and have a sense of working well with our passions and our depth. So it's like just between Tuesday and Wednesday, it's just like a journey in the mind that I can barely describe astrologically. So I'll just repeat that. Mercury's moving into Sagittarius, and by the time we get to the end of the week, he'll be there in earnest. The loveliest part of last week's new moon, which I was not fortunate enough to feel as yummy, was the grand water trine. Right after the new moon, you had Mercury and Mars in Scorpio together, trining Jupiter, bringing, manifestation mojo into it. And then they were trining the North Node and Saturn. So it's about structure and moving towards the future with a greater sense of manifestation confidence. So because it was part of the new moon, the whole lunar cycle features this idea through all of it, that if we keep our walk and our talk in the same place, Mercury conjunct Mars, we can reach into our sense of possibility and confidence that we can create anything we desire, Jupiter in Cancer, and the trine completes with the North Node and Saturn. So Mercury's gone, right? Mercury's just zipped off ahead of Mars. He's much, much, much faster. And so Mars and his slower pace has him trining Jupiter today. So that means that as we came out of the weekend and into today and tomorrow, there's a big thread in the tapestry of a sense of joy and confidence and optimism connected to how we're walking, what we're doing, and what we want to do and accomplish. Mars. Then between today and Wednesday, when Mercury goes nutty, Mars is trining Saturn. So the trine to Jupiter says, I can make anything if my heart desires it. And the trine to Saturn says, like, whoa, Nelly, is that within your, realm? Is it in your capacity? Not in a confronting, difficult way, in an affirmative, helpful way. In other words, Saturn will organically sort of pick up the intentions you set, the desires that you have for projects and movement in your Mars consciousness. We start the week with this great sense of possibility, and then we move through the middle of the week, and the inner wisdom, the Saturn that lives in all of us, knows slow and steady wins the race. Build it with a foundation so that it doesn't get blown away in, harsh weather. And bring all of your wisdom you've collected in your life so far into what you're building now. And this yummy grand water trine and Mars's movement this week sort of helps us co-create with the universe with a lot more grace and efficiency. I'm quickly going to mention Wednesday's quarter moon. It's the first quarter moon, which means it's a week after the new moon. And this is where the moon has moved 90 degrees and is now looking back at the sun in the conflict and obstacle geometry of the square. The archetypal essence of this first pillar, well, actually second pillar of the lunar cycle, because new moon is the first, is that we got to bank a turn towards that which is thriving and away from that which is failing. So it's often a stressful day. Wednesday's going to be a little stressed in the neck up experience as well. So you can count on this first quarter adding to that a little bit because conscious awareness and unconscious impulses are at odds with each other that day. But I'm also mentioning this because this is that first lunar cycle where the new moon sign has the sun changing signs before the full moon. Now, that happened right after the new moon with the sun moving into Scorpio. So I mention this quarter moon because this is the crisis that comes in a cycle that was initiated with balanced and harmonious air, but that has to go into deep waters of change immediately. And so we are in the Scorpio season of deep change. And that first quarter moon on Wednesday wants us to turn within to intuition for our guidance, Aquarius moon, and it should serve the community, Aquarius moon. So there's a lot of subtle happenings with the moon, Mercury, and Mars that starts today and takes us into, I'll just say Thursday, because Wednesday is the crazy Mercury day and the first quarter moon and Mars trining Saturn. And when we get to Thursday and Friday, we might have, a little bit of a break, but then we have a kind of rough weekend. It gave me no pleasure to write this part of the outline because people have been in so much pain in their little hearts. Social media commentary tells me the story. Yeah. And I would say in all of the chaotic transits of the last month and a half, the most commentary I see out there in social media, especially on TikTok, as the audience is much more voluminous, and they are an interactive.
They're quite vocal.
TikTok. Yeah. They like to talk about what's going on with them. So the two things is, heartbreak and nobody's sleeping well.
Whoa. Wait,
Both of
everyone's
which
heartbroken?
make total sense.
You mean at the state of the world?
Well,
or
I'm saying that in the sort of aggregate of commentary, I'm seeing more. We broke up, they broke up, he left, she left. I'm heartbroken than in a sort of a typical moment. Now, Venus is doing a lot this weekend, but I want to start with something that she does today, which is in conjunct the North Node. So what you want to be thinking about from that is think about the weekend we're coming out of and today and the next day or so. Look for ways in which your heart tells you to change the track that you're on. This can be very innocuous, like you just start wearing your nice sweaters because you love them. But it could also feed into some of the relationship challenges and dynamics that have been going on for the last few months and that will probably be a little crunchy on the weekend. So there's a shift in how you're feeling about where something is going. And if it's a relationship dynamic that you're struggling with, for sure you will have some sort of a shift in where you feel that is heading as we come out of this weekend into the week. But then when we get to Saturday, we sort of hit a kind of 2-day potential overwhelm and healing. Venus will square Jupiter on Sunday, which in and of itself is like yummy. It's love and expansion, having a party. Now, because it's a square, the shadow of such a transit will be indulgence, success, extravagance, overindulgence, but still yummy. Problem is, like the night before, in the late evening Pacific time, Venus will oppose Chiron. So that means before we get that overindulging, dramatic Venus transit on Sunday, some of y'all going to be hurting in the heart from wounds as we move into the weekend. And also on Sunday is Saturn getting hit by the sun in the 135-degree Sesca square. So that sets Sunday up in a general way to be a day of Saturnian obstacles and delays and just, little problems with getting around or little feelings of insecurity or inhibition. Anything like Saturnian, but mild because it's a mild geometry. But when you add it to Venus sort of getting, dipped into the wounded spaces on Saturday and into like overwhelm on Sunday, could be a rough weekend for people who are struggling with relationship changes. Solar transits are about conscious awareness. Saturn, one of the lessons he's always trying to teach us is that control is an illusion. So if you're in a relationship narrative that is healing and potentially painful, take a look at where you're trying to control that which is not yours to control, that maybe you're looking at the side of the street that your partner's operating when you should be looking at your side of the street. So add that as a potential theme of any relationship quandaries you find yourself in, and just know that letting go of control when both people understand that you should each sort of surrender, keep on your side of the street and do your best, everybody's happy. But when you're looking at someone else's behavior, you're in the wrong place. So have at that.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show.
Today we have a call-in dreamer, and Steph is calling from Oklahoma. Hey, Steph, what you dreaming?
Hey friends. So I have this dream at least once or twice a year. It doesn't happen at the same time every year, but I thought the fact that it happened this year was interesting at the time that it did.
Gotcha.
So some backstory. I had a caretaker growing up until I was about 3. My parents worked a lot, so they had a friend who took care of me. I'm gonna try to not use real names, but I'll
Okay.
probably mix them up. So that caretaker, it is unclear whether she died from domestic violence or if it was by suicide. So would it be helpful to know the scenario in which she died? Because it kind of does come in the dream a little
I
bit.
would rather hear the dream first so that
Okay.
when you tell me the story, I'm in that state.
So the dream is the last one I had, and it changes every time, but the feelings are there every time. The last dream I had, it was her house, but it wasn't actually her house. It was kind of like giving haunted house movie, and it was like a white house in the middle of nowhere, and it was next to a cemetery for whatever reason, and she was buried in the cemetery. For whatever reason, I really wanted to go see her bones. I don't know why. And the thing that got me this last time was she is sometimes in the dreams. When she doesn't say anything. This last time she wasn't in the dreams. It was me and her kids who I grew up with. And the thing that got me this time about the dream was that the sky was pitch black. Like, the whole time, it was not night or day, it was just pitch black, and then the whole time, I was just, like, going I knew that that was her house, but I was going to a different houses looking for her for whatever reason. And that was the dream.
That's the dream. Oh, yeah, I need some backstory for sure. But now I know where to put it. I know where to sort of drop it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the backstory is, at the time, I mean, I was, like, 3, I didn't know she was in domestic violence, but my parents did. There are memories now that I'm older where I'm like, "Oh, that was domestic violence in front of me, and I didn't know." So, like, the husband would say things like, "Oh, wait until tonight." He would taunt her in front of me, and she'd be like, "Not in front of the kids," and stuff like that. And at the time, you don't understand that, but now that I'm older, um, I do that. I do understand that. The way that she died is she was either stabbed by him or she stabbed herself. The only people that were there to witness it was her and her husband. So she passed away, and her husband is probably not going to tell the truth, and then also got deported and put in jail for previous DV against her. But what had happened was the kids were there during the incident, and they were, I think the oldest might have been like 13 or something like that. Um, they said that she walked in and said, "Look, kids, look what I did." And then, like, opened up her cardigan or sweater, whatever, and they saw the knife in her chest, and then she, like, flopped over. So, there's lots of things that go in my mind when I heard that was, okay, did she say that from hysteria? Did she, from the adrenaline of the situation? If I remember correctly, I think he drank a lot, so that could have been, like, maybe he was too drunk and that happened. And then what has kind of been thrown around is that she was just exhausted from living the life that she did, that she did
Yeah.
that. So, it's possible it was a form of suicide, I
Okay.
suppose.
And all of this was happening when you were 3. The murder was then, or the
Yeah. So
suicide?
she actually died when we had already moved to Oklahoma. We, like, about a year into moving here, she had passed away. That incident
Okay.
had happened, and we got the phone call. My mom is really close with her, and I talked to her a little bit about it, and she said that she harbored guilt, And then in talking to her about that, I felt like I had guilt too, but I was 3, so, like, what would I
Yeah.
have been
But
able to do?
you received something. It landed in you because even at 3, we're still like in a kind of plasticity hypnotic state where
Right.
everything that happens around us is informing us. We don't get to like solid abstract thinking till like 8 or 9.
Right.
Tell me what you recall of her that was about the care.
I don't remember a lot. Like, I don't remember her face. I don't really remember, like, much about anything because I was so young. But I just remembered that she treated me like I was one of her kids and that she really loved me and really took care of me. I just remember feeling a lot of love.
How about your mom and
My
that
mom
idea?
too.
Okay, so mom
Yeah.
offered care. It's not like you're in wounds of mom didn't offer any care.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I say that she was like a second mom to me just because of my mom at the time was pregnant with my younger brother and had so many health issues and wasn't always available in that way. But I mean, my mom did a great job, I would say.
And so the dreams that you have in a recurring way are always involving her, though, a kind of search for her.
Yeah, yeah, just searching for her or her kids are usually always there too if she's not there. But
Okay.
like she's there in
Hmm.
spirit or like in the presence.
And I think one last question I have for you is how do you sort of relate to the idea of domestic violence now as a viewer of a world that is, blowing up and falling apart and all sorts of stuff is coming, like blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Yeah. If we were
So
at a
here's
party,
the
it was like,
kicker.
hey, what are you thinking about domestic violence these days?
Yeah. So here's the kicker. I
Mhm.
have worked at a domestic violence agency for the past 8 years now. And weirdly enough, one of the soft spots in my when we have clients is Spanish speaking clients. I, like I have a hard time with clients like that because it just breaks my heart. I can do kids, elderly, I'm fine at that. But when it comes to Spanish speaking clients, I'm just like,
Yeah,
I fall
it's you.
apart.
You have a
But I
trigger.
do, yeah. So I've worked there for a long time. And, when I mentioned this to my mom in passing, she was like, do you think she's saying thank you? And I was like, well, she doesn't say anything in my dreams. So I don't
Yeah.
know. But, I work in DV every day. So it's just one of
Okay.
those
Yeah. In
things where
fact,
I'm
I would
like,
say it's in your bones
yeah,
to work
yeah.
TV, and that's part of what you're asking a lot of questions because it is a very short and simple dream, and it does connect to you calling for something that I don't know explains the why you are so connected to this. It's like, honey, most of us do what we do because we were traumatized. It's like, I'm very successful because of my traumas, because I can turn around and teach people the healing that I've been through, but that's not your story in a direct and overt way. And here you have devoted your life. Now, the trigger that you have with Hispanic speaking, that's our evidence that your 3-year-old sponge mind received the imprinting of something nefarious and dangerous out there so that when you hear the Spanish accent or speaking Spanish with that theme, of course, it's like part of you is 3 years old. So this is good for you to know as a social worker because, you got to know, who ought to maybe go in your place if that's an option when you were at work. So searching for her bones is like to get inside of her walk. The bones are what stays longest when we pass. And so her bones are still around. And so there's like a revisit to like the center of her. In some ways, when we're alive, we think the muscles are moving us, but it's almost like the bones are how we're receiving the electrical impulses of this magnet that we live on. And then the muscles respond to, like, I'm getting into like my little woo-woo thing about things I feel in my body. But the point is, searching for her bones is to connect to something primal in you that might even connect to a dharmic reason for being here. that you come in to like bring some, healing and love in a particular way. And so it's there in your bones. It doesn't seem to line up in an overt way of why, but there's some desire to connect to that. I will also say this. The fact that she's never speaking is kind of a hint that there's a visitation going on. Like when your mom says, maybe she's trying to thank you. It's like, nah, she's dead. She's here in the energetic connection from those who remember her, and her consciousness is still present until all of you who do remember her have passed on as well. So she won't have I've got to say thank you. It's the other way around, right? It's that we have something to sort of either give or receive or be shifted by having a tether to some sort of guidance that she's providing for you. In my meditation, I call it in the 12th chakra that this is the place where those once in bodies remain close to help.
Wow.
So there's lots of people who just left their bodies who are going to be around for a generation or two, and they assist. Woo woo, But I believe in all the woo. I just have to, as a scientist, sort of also look at the scientific part. The fact that the sky was pitch black in this and not day or night does have some sort of a meaning of absence of light or profound shadow. Do you have any sort of felt association about why now? Why the timing?
So I actually brought it up to my coworker because she is Spanish speaking, so I feel a little bit more related to her with our cultural upbringing. And this dream actually happened the Saturday before Dia de los Muertos started, I believe. I'm not Mexican. My caretaker was Mexican, and my coworker is Mexican, but she didn't grow up celebrating. So she said sounds possible that the day before it happened, maybe that was kind of like they were putting up her picture. Because from my understanding, I think they put the picture up first and then the ofrendas, but I'm not 100% sure, and I didn't look it up or anything. So I just thought it was interesting that she visited me in October, and October is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we've been pretty busy at work.
Oh, damn.
So
I think that has a lot of sprinkle on it of connection to guidance that's multidimensional, that might even be in the form of her specific spirit. I love the connection to the Day of the Dead because that is in her energetic completely. And it's a moment where, I don't know the structure or the order either, but I do know that it's when the veil is thinnest, so that there's an ability to connect and visit, which is no different than the European pagan experience, that eventually became Halloween. And, my fucking brain fog, I can't remember the name of the holiday. Samhain? No, I'm not going to bother trying.
Samhain.
Yeah, I think it's Samhain. I can't remember. At any rate, it's a thin time, and, whether to say thank you or not, I think she's squeezed in a little closer because of the timing and because of that distinction of the black and being very clear that you want to see her bones. Somehow seeing her bones has maybe an intrapsychic completion that's in the direction of you being less triggered because you're not just pushing the trigger away, you're examining it professionally, which is your job. And so the dream world might also be helping you go into shadowy places where a 3-year-old you is frightened of what happens when people speaking Spanish get loud. So I think you're healing it and moving towards integration.
That's awesome. The black sky, like I said, was really interesting. I don't think I've had that happen so far.
Yeah.
If I did, I don't remember it.
I have never heard that. In 30, 40 years of hearing dreams, I've never heard someone describe what you just described.
Okay, a black
Because
sky?
of that, then it's not day-night consciousness, it's something other.
Okay.
So it's not about a cycle of now I'm at night, I've got to look in the shadow. It's bigger because of its unnaturalness. It got your attention, and that says to me you're in big shadow. So have at it.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.